This is Our Future live panel, day 2. We're talking about permaculture. We're talking about gardening. I hope that you brought your questions. If you look down below on your screen, or if it's your phone, you might need to give your phone a little shake. But whatever you need to do, there's a chat button, and click that chat button and introduce yourself to everyone down there below, and start that chat going, because this is one of the greatest aspects of this, is that you can ask questions directly. You can connect with people here. You can meet people that are in your bioregion that are interested in the things that you're interested in, maybe in other countries, but maybe you're really into something in particular, and they're the only person that's really into it like you are. So this is a wonderful place to meet people. This is a great place. There's more people I got to let in. All right, and these are incredible people to follow. These are people to learn from. These are people that I have been learning from and discussing ideas with for years. And so these are people to follow. These are people to, bookmark the links, follow, subscribe, what have you. But you'll recognize some of them are speakers as well. And some of them are past speakers as well. And so this is an incredible group. So do you guys want me to introduce you one by one, or should we do introductions ourselves? What would you like to do, Raleigh?
You can do it.
I mean, I've been down for a self intro, but it depends on, what Temek and David.
I don't know how you're going to do this,
wants.
Matt. I don't know if I trust you.
I've never done a webinar before. I am scared. Scared out of my wits. No, well, Matt, feel free. How about introduce anyone who would like to be introduced, and I could totally introduce myself if that's.
Oh no, I can do it. So all right, so let's just go down the. I don't know what order it is for you all, because these screens, they actually kind of change the order with who's in top depending on a variety of things. But I'm just going to go top left and read across, just like reading a book. So Raleigh Latham is one of the co-founders of Sustainable Design Masterclass, which many of us watched for many years and were inspired by. So many of the speakers that have been a part of Our Future throughout the years have come from Sustainable Design Masterclass. And it's something that you did with Neil Speckman. Neil Speckman's a speaker again this year at Our Future. And you've also worked extensively with Zach Weiss, and you've documented the work of Sepp Holzer and a lot of designs all over the world. He's really been able to kind of keep the heartbeat through his documentary work and photography work and film work on like how things are developing in permaculture and the regenerative world. So Raleigh is always working on something. He's like really extremely industrious, and he's always working on something that's really fascinating. So he's a wealth of information, but he's hard to sometimes get a hold of because he's always busy. So I'm so grateful that you're here. We met originally at Permaculture Voices, Permaculture Voices 2, when my oldest son, James was 8. And so that means my youngest son was 4, and that's why he wasn't there, because he was home with mom. So he knows my family really well. And it's just a pleasure to see you here. James still has that hat, still wears it all the time.
Perfect.
He pulled the hat off his head and gave it to James when he was a boy. So
very cool.
Yeah, we love you. All right, next up is Morag Gamble, and she is an inspiration for me personally. She's a fellow teacher. She's a teacher of teachers, which that's like the highest level of teacher in many ways. And she is leading the way. And so like I got involved in permaculture in the K through 12 environment. And I would say the leader in the K through 12 environment in many ways is Morag. And if you're not following her, this is an excellent time to check out her permaculture youth work, her teachers work, her education work. She is thorough. And that's the other thing, is her education, her understanding crosses borders and connects things. And she she's amazing. And so I really appreciate you being here with us and sharing your wisdom and experience.
Thanks,
And
Matt. It's a delight.
and we'll make sure that we share links because I know you have links to share and things to offer people. And then Cuauhtemoc is an old friend of mine, and he's been working with microbes for even longer. He's been friends with the microbes even longer. And he is truly a microbe farmer. He's the one who introduced me to EM. He's the one who opened my mind about facultative anaerobes, opened my mind around looking at the biochemistry layer below everything to connect everything. It was really his impetus and inspiration early on that started me on that whole path. And he has worked in farms. He's worked in cannabis cultivation. He's worked in soil consulting, composting, biochar. His knowledge is very, very pragmatic. But then when he starts going into it, he understands that micro to macro in a way that's very, very powerfully unique because he can teach it to you in a way that sticks. So, and I've seen him do this with groups. He's taught biology and chemistry to groups of children, and I've seen him do it. And my job was like on the floor the entire time. He's an incredible teacher. So that's Cuauhtemoc. And then David Spicer is here. And David, I have watched you from afar. Your earthworks, your pond work, you have this humble air about you that's really just about getting the work done and honoring the work and being straightforward that I really appreciate. And it is just an absolute pleasure to be able to actually meet you, though digitally, for the first time. So thank you for honoring us and being here.
Pleasure. I love your work, mate. I take my hat off to you, mate. You've just gone out there and done it, and that's what we need to do. Just get rid of that fear. And I like to say baby steps and baby mistakes at the start. That's the best way to take on things, I reckon.
Yeah, and the faster we process our mistakes. Hey, Rascal is the final one in the bunch. Here we go. And Maddie could show up. I'm just going to open that possibility that Maddie could show up. She could feel strong enough. She said maybe, but she was sick. So that's why her talk is shifted to the end. But Rascal Turbeville, Rascal is a mycologist. He's a gardener, he's a permaculturist, he's an educator, he's a researcher, he's a grower. He is someone who is he does a lot of things. He's a dabbler, and he's also a master of many things too. So thank you for being here, Rascal. Is your mic on?
Yes, it's on now. I just had it
excellent,
muted.
excellent.
There's probably
I see people are muting to be like polite. I'm like, loud, probably. All right. Well, I am really excited. Everyone, click down below. Start entering your questions. Let's get this going because you've got some incredible people here to run your questions by. All right. So folks are coming in from Nevada, Virginia, Missouri, Northamptonshire, UK, Indonesia. This is amazing. Kansas City, Texas, Alberta, Canada, Ohio, Victoria, Australia, and another one from India, British Columbia. This is amazing, guys. Thank you all for being here. All right. So I'm looking for questions. Feel free to make it all caps so it's easy to find in the chat. So yeah, Raleigh is currently working on waterstories.com. That is something that is very worthy checking out. It is so well done. It's a work of art. It's highly entertaining, visually stimulating, but it also is deeply educational. And it's a piece that, I went into the soil. I went deep into the soil. Zach Weiss is going deep into the water. And it's incredible because water, just like soil, is a linchpin.
Yeah, and props to David for being an amazing water restoration practitioner. Like really, it was really cool having you on one of the webinars. That was awesome. And Matt, your skill in the soil, so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's a question that's kind of an interesting one. I think that this is about looking for land. As someone with no land, where would you start looking for a KNF based market garden? So they want to practice KNF based composting, IMO. So they want probably enough land to be able to do that. And then they want to do a market gardening situation. So Weston, Rob, it would probably depend on where you are in the world, but what are some of the things that you all think about when you're looking for land or somewhere to grow? Rascal, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as far as, searching for land, that is really dependent on if you have, the capital to purchase land, which not a lot of people in our modern age with the current pressures of capitalism do have that. So I think, someone asking that question, I would imagine maybe doesn't have that kind of access. So I'd say leasing land. And there's a lot of, good examples out there of how leasing land can be a very profitable way to farm, not only support the lease, but grow food and, form a profit for your endeavor if that's something you're trying to do. So I think leasing, and if you're doing these, regenerative practices, whether it's KNF, no-till market gardening, or something like, regenerative grazing and holistic management, you're going to make that piece of land more abundant and more fertile every year with the right kind of management. And in that way, you're going to increase your yield, potentially your profit, and it's also going to benefit the rest of the ecology and human communities as well. So I think leasing land is a really good place to start. There's also community gardens, but that's not necessarily for a market garden where you're trying to make a profit.
Morag, what would you add to this?
I really love the idea of leasing. I would have suggested something similar to that. But I've also noticed that there's a number of different cooperative farming systems that are happening here. I'm sure they're happening in your part of the world too, where people are getting together and creating arrangements like offering people parts of backyards. And it's not necessarily a formal leasing, but it's this community arrangement where people are going from, backyard to backyard. A friend of mine actually in Canberra, the capital of Australia, is part of an urban farming project where they have a series of backyards that they all farm. Someone coordinates that as a market garden that's dispersed. So I think, like expanding the possibilities in your mind about what the space looks like. It could be a series of places throughout an urban area. So I think,
that was Curtis Stone's
really about
beginning.
talking with other people and finding other people who you could be allies with and connecting with those people who want to be the end user of your produce and seeing if there's a way to make arrangements with them. Like if they get weekly produce, I'm sure that they would be more than willing to start to have a conversation with you about, yeah, sure, I've got this extra piece of land here. You make sure that I get weekly produce. We can make an arrangement that you can have part of my land. So I would be exploring those sort of options as well.
And Matt, there's something too going on when it comes to land ownership that I just learned over at Camp Singeman from Jake and Brian. And that's this thing called carbon credits. And what we got to think now when we're buying land is before, when you buy land, you're the one paying the mortgage. But now with carbon credits, if we think about the trees that we have on that land, those are like our renters now. We're going to start getting paid for the carbon sinks on the land that we purchase. So this means that a lot of land that's cheap and available for us with very little bit of money, if we can arrange it correctly with carbon credits, plus with the addition of regenerative farming, and now we're finding that most of the carbon credits, the gigaton weight is stored in the bacterial layer. There's going to be a lot of things happening there. We're just not looking at the trees and grasses for sinking the carbon, but we're looking at the soil now and who lives in the soil and what's breathing in these components. And these are going to give us the revenue to help us make those monthly payments and to continue to regenerative farm. And I think really that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get more people to do regenerative farming and they're paying them to do it. So a lot of people haven't heard about this carbon credit thing happening, but people are buying land in places that are super cheap and the trees are pretty much paying the mortgage for them. So thinking about this as an option, as an aid in your mortgage, I think is something that we need to start talking more about.
I hadn't heard of
That's
that
good.
before. David, would you want to add something to this?
Yeah, look, I think I know Darren mentioned quite a few years ago, Darren Doherty, about the carbon credits, and that's fine. It's just, from my understanding, you can't touch it. You can't touch it.
Yeah.
So you can't go in and interact with it. You can't harvest.
Democratic.
So look, I'll sit on the fence on that one. Like I've got a wealthy client who's looking at property because of that reason. But then how do you go in, and in Australia or California, how do you go in and manage to do the hazard reduction if that's what you want to do? You know, obviously we don't want to burn it, but we need to do some cycling of material to get the succession up, particularly in Australia where we've got very degraded eucalypt forests, and that's continuously being burnt where I am. So I feel, and I've got no science behind it, but I feel it needs an intervention to stimulate more life. So I'm on the fence with that one. Yeah.
And it's kind of the fire that's driving the whole thing for Rake Force, is because it's the biochar thing that we're doing, right? So we're capturing the carbon credits from the CO2 sink and sequestering the carbon in the biochar, but that's just additive to the land sequestering as well. So those are big concerns, but with the accepting of biochar, and now they're getting the measurements for what that calculates into, you can see where it's the beginning stage of this thing. It's not the cure-all, but we need to start being part of it as investors as it moves forward, and this thing changes year by year so that we can benefit from the practices we're already doing.
All right, Raleigh, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I'll quickly chime in. I wish I knew more about how to get land better, because it's something I look at. I'm like, wow, it's something I need to do. But I've known people who have gotten really creative on ways to get land, because there's this huge generational wealth, generational transfer coming up, where people who are older are retiring en masse. They have land, they're looking to hand it over. This includes governments and municipalities who are sitting on millions of acres looking for something to do with that land. So often you reach out to the community, people in your community, towns, municipal governments, city governments, and they have a lot of connections to land for cheap leasing. You know, BLM will lease out land at almost for free in some places. And, you know, like community connections are ways to get cheap land. I know my friend he set up a steward agreement where they gave him 30 acres in exchange and a house to live on in exchange for grazing. And that's it. So there's these things like that exist. You just have to be really creative in finding them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that there is a huge world that people usually don't talk about. That starts with a B. It's called bartering. You will find that people want to trade. People want to do things with you old school, with a handshake, with integrity, and they want you to do that because we make the world a better place when we do things that require trust and faith in each other and then follow through. It's a magical, sweet thing. And I've seen it happen more and more in the communities I've been living in. And there's this, despite the craziness on the devices, I'm seeing people's hearts open more and people connect more in person. And maybe it's because they're getting so loud on the devices that's the case. But it's incredible when you put yourself in the right place, when you are open to potential and you've done your work, you've done your homework. So you're going to that local permaculture group, you're going to the local farmers market, you're studying, you've got the books, you're preparing to have chickens, or whatever level, whatever thing we're talking about. Maybe it's a market garden we're talking about. But some people are just trying to get themselves, started in these areas. But
I just, sorry,
yeah, Morag, jump in.
I was going to jump in there because I think that's what you're saying is so important, and I've seen it over and over again. It's this relational thing. It's about building community, but I think a really important part of that is for you, if you're wanting to step into this world, to really start to step up and be present in your community and be giving service in your community and demonstrating what's possible, so that you can spark the imagination of those that might go, oh, that is exactly what I would love to see in my place. I don't have the time or the skills, but I see you do. So, if this is, it's like what David said, baby steps, like maybe it's starting, I think it was David, sorry, that, starting maybe in the local community garden, or perhaps it's at a local school or somewhere where you can be showing those skills to other people, opening up the conversations that then create those possibilities. You can't just kind of jump from here to here. You have to kind of be in a courtship first with your community for your community to understand you and to know what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really well said. And this is something that is something that we all have to do to a certain degree, because whether we're the ones with not enough land, or children that need to practice these things on land that we don't, you know what I mean? Or we're someone with land, we're all part of this equation as a community, and making those closer connections is literally how those solutions are all met. Because it's, oh, well, I heard about it through the lady who we help around the corner in our neighborhood, this old lady, that her nephew is, and then all these wonderful coincidences happen, and it makes life wonderful. It makes life beautiful. Mm-hmm. All right. So here in Oklahoma, we have at least 2 lakes. They have to add oxygen and other chemicals into them because of the runoff from golf courses and such. Any experience in using hugelkultur to filter runoff through a leaky weir method meant to filter? And I would say, let's open this up a little bit and say, are there any suggestions that you would have for dealing with lakes in that condition? Because I feel like Quantamuk, might have something to say about this. Do you want to start?
I got a little solution in my hand here, but I think they're on the path where they're thinking about hugelkultur as a filtration. But what I do is kind of jumpstart that, and I get the microbes that are created from the diversity of the hugelkultur. And we've had so much luck by adding in the EM solution to not only to soil, but water. And that's because EM's functions the same as it does in soil as it does in water. And when it hits the water, it's not a microorganism that comes to take over the environment, but it's usually a food source for the indigenous microbes that already live in that water. Each water has a very unique set of microorganisms depending on where it's at in the water system. But we don't think about feeding those microorganisms that may be lacking their food and their immunity, just like a person would. And that's what's really good about the EM, is it boosts the immune system of the indigenous microbes, which are really the ones that have been doing the work in that area since way before people even come here. That great success doing that. But when it comes to things like the water has too much grass growing in it, too much algae, we found that the EM outcompetes and consumes the excess nitrogen, which then keeps those blooms smaller. And the best thing about it is one of the microbes in the EM, the purple non-sulfur bacteria, as it consumes these things, and it can consume things either by sunlight, which is super cool, or by the chemicals in the water, or sugars, or even toxic compounds in waters, is a food source for purple non-sulfur bacteria. But as it gobbles up stuff, just like us, it's leaving behind solids and gases, these amino acids, these fulvic acids, these building blocks for life, but its gases are going to be oxygen. It's like you put an air pump in that that thing. So the more toxins that are in there, the gassier this thing's getting, the more oxygen that it's providing to the water. And this is what makes it favorable for those other microbes that keep the balance of the water to come into perfection. And it's something that you can do just like sourdough bread. I know that once you brew it a couple times, you can't call it EM, but call it what you want. I call it because it works. And once you have these little microbes, you can get them and culture them. It's not something you got to keep buying. And what we did with the ball was we took the EM and we took the mud from the areas around the toxic area or the ponds that we're cleaning, because that has its own microbiology in that dirt. So if I can introduce the EM to those microbes in a little ball form, it's kind of like having a meeting right now. And you'll have this amazing hyphae grow out of these things, but it's conversing about what the environment's like. The indigenous microbes of the area has its own language and can tell you a story, but now it's talking to the EM. It's getting healthy from the EM in the ball form. So now when these things hit the water, they've already had a meeting. They've already known everybody, all the microbial language that they're going to communicate with. And it gives them just a little bit faster chance at the bioremediation because everything happens at lightning speed. So this is like the pre-meeting for that. So we like to use the mud from areas in which we're trying to fix, mix that with either an EM culture or a bokashi, and I think you'll be on the path. We're adding the biochar into the component as well because naturally charcoal cleans water, but it gives those microorganisms a permanent housing for a long time. If something were to, decomposition, drought, sometimes our water sources ebb and flow very high and very low. With the charcoal, these beneficial microbes are going to have a home for a long time. So we've kind of added that to the component as well. But I mean, once you start rolling the balls, imagination's all yours. You can start adding, grasses and juncuses, all these water plants into the balls and turn them into seed balls at the same time you're inoculating the water, and you start taking care of a lot of regeneration work at the same time. So touch the mud, it'll start to dream with you, and you'll be what you can do.
I love it. Rascal, did you want to add anything about like maybe inoculating the law? I don't know, hugelculture, fungal culture thing.
Totally. I just want to say, Quatamuk, brother, I love hearing you talk about microbes every time it happens. Just, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait, have we not all three been together since radical mycology?
No, I haven't. Right?
Oh my gosh. We were on a panel together, the three of us at Radical Mycology, I think in 2018.
Yeah.
It was some groundbreaking stuff too. I think we all kind of unraveled something together, and it's just always magical to be in your guys' presence.
We're still doing it. I love it.
Yep. Coming in the spiral, coming back to the same point in the spiral. So yeah, pleasure to be here with everybody, but yeah, so being a mycologist by profession, I'll talk a little bit about, on the same line of what Quatamuk was talking about, getting these organisms, these biological organisms to help break down, pollutants or even accumulate pollutants that are in our environment. Bioremediation as a term kind of encompasses utilizing all categories of living organisms, plants, bacteria, and fungi, because they all have, different functions in the world of remediation. They're all a little bit better at remediating certain kinds of compounds, like fungi, for instance. They have a huge chemical cocktail of extracellular enzymes that they produce from their hyphae, from their roots, for lack of a better term. And so these enzymes are capable of cleaving apart these insanely complex chemical chains, things like, petroleum hydrocarbons, really, intricate layers of different carbon chains, among other things. They can, with these simple enzymes, they know really how to produce, cleave these chemicals in half, in multiple pieces, to the point, keep getting it smaller and smaller, but then it's kind of inert in the environment, or it's food for another organism and is no longer considered a pollutant. And so plants are really good at, pulling things up into their body. They don't do as much of the breakdown as fungi. Fungi are kind of the first level of breakdown. They break down some of the really large, complex chemical structures. And then moving into bacteria, they start to then break apart the compounds that the fungi have made into smaller and smaller pieces. And we kind of want to take it through a cycle, hitting it, with all those different groups of organisms, to really be effective at whatever kind of remediation project we're doing. Fungi have a really interesting role in that, especially macro fungi, like decomposers like reishi and oyster. They're really resilient, and they produce a lot of these really good enzymes that have been tested for either breaking down hydrocarbons or capturing heavy metals. And one of the most interesting components of macrofungi that I find for remediation is one, their tensile strength. So they become very solid, and you could build filters that would last for quite some time out of mycelium. This right here is a reishi block. So this has been sitting outside in the rain for 2 years, and it's no longer living, but here, let's see. Totally solid, maintains its shape. And so this could be utilized as a filter. And even when the mycelium is no longer living, it can still capture heavy metals as they pass through in water, basically. So it's a whole field called mycofiltration, and there's still so much research that needs to be done to find the right pair of microorganisms with the right contaminants. But the potential is there. Because it can be really hard to incentivize a living organism to exist in a toxic environment sometimes. So in a certain situation, it might actually be easier to have something that isn't alive. And if it continues to serve that same function of remediating, then, that's amazing. And plus, blocks like this, if you have mushroom farmers around you, they're usually throwing these away after a couple flushes. They might even still be alive. You get some flushes of mushrooms off of them, and then you can use them in a remediation project. Mix that into a hugelkultur, inoculate your logs. So not only are you getting, the physical filter of the wood and kind of that humus structure that's built by good soil, but you also have the hyphae and the bacteria integrated there, producing these enzymes, capturing these heavy metals. And the more we can bring in the community and create these relationships, the more we're going to be effective at this job. Because, our Western mind likes to find the one thing that does the job. But really, we can't do it without community. And that hits, so many levels, like we were talking about earlier. It's like we need our community as humans. The microbes need their community. The trees need the microbes, the animals. It's all a part of it. So those are my 2 cents on the filtration of water.
Excellent.
Can I just chime in there too?
Yeah.
Because I think it was mentioned in the comments earlier as well. When we're sort of focusing on how to come up with the solution for something, like what is going on? Why is it that we're actually needing to do this work? And step up your solutioning further up and see how, possibly could you approach the golf courses and bring them together in a conversation, maybe with the local council and a whole lot of people who have a lot of great ideas, and start there. So it doesn't have to filter so far down the chain that we're fixing up stuff all the time. Let's try and really think about change at that bigger scale.
And the wild thing, I want to just chime in again, jump on the chime. But I completely agree. And the thing is, it's not that far upstream. It's like, we got to go upstream to figure out what the real problems are. It's right in your local area. It's those golf courses. It's right there. And, you probably, if you approach them in the right way, they're going to be probably reveal that they feel it. They feel that pain of an embarrassment and shame, and they don't know where to put it and how to deal with it. And so that's why there's so much opposition. And if they had a clear solution that they knew would work, that they could invest in, that had a clear path, and the local community was behind, they would do it. And like that, local politics works that way. Local communities work that way. They go with what makes sense that the people all want. And so it's education, it's connection, and like she just said, it's actually going to the people, making a human connection with them, and making a proposal that strikes them as not just reasonable, but recognizing their position. You'll find some incredible connections that are possible there. David, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, look, it's funny how the further you go down into the science, but it still comes back to the practical. Well, as in, I know from experience or from, reading or whatever, if you build a dam and you want to kickstart that dam or pond into life, go and get a bucket of water and some mud, and then inoculate that dam. So, like, it's really cool that we've got two brains on the mycology spectrum or biology spectrum right out there. But from the practical, because, my hands have used a shovel a lot, like, so I'm more on the practical side of things. So, but I know from experience what just adding that little bit of diversity into a new dam does, and then more life comes in. It's quite profound, and the talk of the EM has just got my mind going. And yeah, this is already great. I've already learned something new, which is fantastic. So I always say we only got to take one step in the right direction, and nature takes 10. And I've seen that so many times. And if we get involved and interact, that's why I'm moving to really having good access on sites, because good access creates good interaction. Because if you can walk easily along a path, you get to observe, you go in an observation mode. It's a bit like riding a horse over a motorbike, because you're wandering off into the distance and you're almost daydreaming. That's what I like to do. I daydream on an escalator, I do. My mind wanders off, So I think to keeping this playful mindset is a really powerful thing. Yeah. That's all I need.
I love it. Raleigh, have you encountered any creative filtration methods in your documentations?
Oh yeah, there's two. First is a research paper by Sonoma Biochar, was point source pollution, where they're filtering out nitrates from waterways. It's basically making concrete cages in these waterways filled with biochar. Basically, it took down the nitrate levels by 80%. So that could be a point source pollution, where it's like, hey, a waterway coming out of this, waterways that are coming out of that golf course, makes them put in these cages filled with charcoal, then measure the pollution coming out the other side. That seems like a solution right there. The other is, we did a webinar with Tom Duncan called Floating Wetlands, about how to reverse algae blooms. And it was creating these floating, basically bamboo or styrofoam, blocks that could, with really long reeds, that would suck out nitrates from lakes with algae blooms. And they were able just to plant them and take them out, till the levels of nitrates went down and the oxygen levels went up. And that was a really cool solution, where it was proven time and time again that dead zones in lakes can be reversed. And I know that, I remember being in Iowa when those blooms were happening. It pissed me off so much that you couldn't swim in the summertime because these blooms were happening, and you would get sick if you even touched the water. Whoa. So it's like these solutions are out there, and it's like, gosh, if people just knew that this solution exists for this problem, and if these people are creating this problem, that we could do something about it.
I love that. And what's so important to take away is that there is so many solutions to this one problem, and these problems are affecting an entire bioregion. It wasn't just one part of Iowa, it was Iowa. And so we have these solutions that literally can affect entire bioregions, and they're not mine. They're not, Raleigh's. They're not Quadamuc's. They're all of ours. They're our community, our human communities, and they're everywhere. These solutions are being showcased if you look for them on YouTube in Raleigh's. Actually, the next question, Raleigh, is what's your selection process for projects and films and places to spotlight?
Yeah, good question. All right, so couple things I like to do is first check out the area. It's like have people created a film or like an article about an area that you think is absolutely mind blowing. What's the story of it? You know, like we're making a 30-minute, hopefully an hour-long documentary about Sepp Holzer, and I got to see the Kremeterhof and the whole, and you know, like sitting on a ton of footage about the Holzerhof. And of course, it's an epic place. It's like a Disneyland of permaculture in the Alps. But there's these other areas that I'd love to get to. Think of all of the ancient terra preta sites in South America that people
Gotta give me soil
continuously samples. Continuously inhabited for thousands of years. Like that's permaculture right there. That it existed in some areas even pre-ice age, you know, like BC areas where they came out with articles like, hey, people have been here since before the last ice age. That would be epic to see how people who have memories of those places, like, you know, how you tell a story about that. So there's all these epic places, basically whatever interests me and ideally what I've seen and hopefully what will make an impact on somebody. That's kind of what I use for the selection process.
Wow, I'm so excited for you to do that work. I'm fascinated with ancient history, like all the stuff that's basically prehistorian just endlessly fascinates me. So I'm so excited. I think everyone else is excited as well. My internet just became unstable. Let me switch my internet. I'm going to become weird for a second. All right. I think I'm back. Am I back? 1, 2, 3. And hopefully I'm back. Not back yet.
He's an AI.
All right. There we go. I'm back.
Now he's back.
It'll just make bad noises. And so I didn't want it to like go all crazy. It just becomes unstable sometimes. All right. So this next question is really, really interesting. And this is something that I'm going to exaggerate so it's easier to answer because there's obviously a middle section, a sweet spot that, or Goldilocks, so to speak, that would make it so that it would conflict the question. But would it make more sense to look for a damaged piece of land and improve it over years, or wait and purchase a plot of land that is more amiable, more open to doing permaculture and farming? What do you guys think about that? David, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always look what's coming to the site. So I think it's really, you know, ideally, now there's always ideals, but if you can get a forested watershed, you're in such a better situation for water quality. That water quality entering your site is going to be much greater than, you know, whether it's cropping or grazing or whatever. That's one thing that I would say to people to look for is a forested watershed, ideally. Now, we can't run away from toxins because they're bloody everywhere. And we just got to deal with it. But if you can make that choice, having that somewhat of a forested watershed before it enters your site that you're looking at is well, you've already got a sponge effect up above you. So you know you don't have these big surges of events coming at you in water. You know, when you get a big rain event, you don't have that big event coming. It's more passive. So that's one thing I would say. That's my 2 cents worth. That's
excellent. Morag, what would you like to add?
Yeah, well, I kind of missed the start of that question, but to me, the response would be, you know, what is it for? If you're in service of regenerating the bioregion, then pick the land that needs the most care and attention. If it's about having your homestead and you're growing your food, then I'd be following David's advice. You know, possibly you could be looking at ways that, you know, you could maybe be purchasing some land as a collective, as a restoration project, at the same time as finding land together somewhere where you could be doing your homesteading or growing more productive and easily, and get that started happening, because that's where the small hanging fruit for growing food is in the better land, obviously. So it's not an easy answer, because the question has so much more context to it.
And I exaggerated it to make it easier, because it was really just poor plot of land or work for a purchase of 5 to 10 acres. So it's like amiable versus damaged, was the exaggeration. What do you think, Raleigh?
Some of the really, I think of like Neil Spackman is a perfect example of this. Going into extreme dead zones where the land is extremely cheap, and helping them build, mangrove forest and regenerative, like ocean farming systems. Like that's really cool. But I think it's like the areas where people are going to live there for hundreds of years, like where are the areas where people have a vision that they want to continuously live for the next 1,000 years, like that, because we know there's all the solutions we have to repair the ecosystem. It's like, where do we have these areas where people want to inhabit for the next many generations and lifetimes? Like, I think that's like, holistic management. Who is going to look out of these missions that take lifetimes and repair it? That's where I would start looking for land. Like, do you know 100 people who are going to live in this area and repair it from the mountains to the ocean? Like that'd be the ideal, versus like, I know this one wealthy person who owns 10,000 acres. I think that's way less powerful.
I just want to jump back in again, because I live here at an eco village in Queensland, Australia. It's 640 acres nestled up in around, we've got, 3,500 acres of forest around us. And this was a degraded, eroded piece of land that was pretty much worth nothing when people came here about, 30 years ago to start this eco-village. So it's, when I first got here, I was a little bit surprised to think, oh my gosh, what is this place? It's just a whole lot of like little cabins on this abandoned field. It was kind of unusual. But now, if I try and take anyone on a walking tour of Crystal Waters, you cannot see the houses. The landscape has been transformed, and that started with the rehydration of the landscape by creating those leaky weirs and the multiple lakes all across the landscape, and protecting the riparian zones and letting 50% of the land just regenerate naturally, and then doing the food forest in the middle of the landscape. 30 years, this place is absolutely transformed. So that is still a lot of time, but as a community piece of a community project, restoring this upper part of the catchment, and then connecting through what's going on in the whole of the bioregion, it's really kind of remarkable. And what Riley said about, where do you want to live? Where is the place where you can have your base, that you can really connect in with country, you can connect in with Indigenous community, you can connect in with, start to understand what's going on in the seasons, and, become, the gardening, then you can have this feeling of somewhat resilience and robustness and security, that you can feel like you can go out and be of service to regenerating other pieces of land.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in there, mate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that, one of the great pleasures I'm lucky with the work I do it's a modern job, because it's kind of instant. When you work with earthworks, and I always say earthworks it's like the backbone of the system. Once you get that earthworks in, then the system really starts to build itself, because you've created deposition systems. You've banked the water, but you've also banked all the organics and the seed that's moving through the system. So as soon as you put that water out onto a level, you've changed the dynamics of the landscape totally. So, don't be scared by this barren desert. If you've got a bit of catchment above you, well, then you've got potential to harvest a lot of water and store it, and terraform, because we've always terraformed the landscape. So, get into that. Like earthworks, it's kind of an interesting game to be in because, you know, I work with clients who are very attached to landscape, and that's good. They want to repair it and all that. And you bring in a big machine, you start belting the shit out of the landscape, and people go, oh my God. But when it all comes back together, and I say you put the clothes back on because you put the topsoil back on and seed it all out, and then it has form and function and also access, which I think puts people's minds to be able to interact with the landscape easier. So, yeah, really gelling with Morag said there, you know, you can go from a bare site and you put the right set of earthworks in. I always say I do a basic mainframe. You can always do more in the future, but just get that basic mainframe in so you sort of setting up the water system, water access structure position, really, zones and sectors. That's really what I look at. But it can be frightening at the start, but once you start and you start putting the system in, and then you see the rain come, and then that's well, you're a kid in a lolly shop. Oh wow, I've got all this water stored, and you know, where do I send it? And you know, what can I do with it? And look at this, is grown. Anyway, life starts, and that's why that one step in the right direction and nature takes 10 is so powerful for me, because I've seen it. And if you start with water and just some small terraforming, life kicks off. It's extremely rewarding work.
I completely agree. Quatamuk, would you like to add to this?
Sure. Well, I guess the concept that I always use for whether I'm going to get new land or evaluating land or even indoor operations is there's 4 things I always look at: sun, soil, water, air. And as I calculate those 4 things, they put me in the direction as what can I grow here based on what I have here. And every site, and no matter where you're going around the country, those 4 rules there are going to dictate how that particular site's going to be productive. There's things that I want to grow there, but when I take those 4 things into calculation, then that tells me the truth whether or not I can do what I want to do there. And then if I can't, I look at what can be done in that situation and take that and run, so I don't have to face a ton of problems pushing my idea when that land already has its own.
What's so incredible is you and David, you started answering the next question, which is like, what's the first thing that you do on a new property and a new site? So that was brilliant. Rascal, do you want to jump into either aspect of the question?
Yeah, I'll just maybe even jump into both. Yeah, I mean, y'all covered a lot of the things I was thinking about. Like Morag was saying, you know, the ecological answer is always, it depends. It's always like, depending on the variables or the site, it's going to change, or what your goals are. Because yeah, the damaged land is going to be cheaper. And, you know, it might even be closer to your community if you're used to living in a suburban or more of an urban environment. You know, it comes with, you know, somewhat of a cost, but with all these solutions we have around us, we can actually see extremely quick regeneration of sites if we pay attention to the right backbone, you know, if we do the remediation. So I wouldn't necessarily say people should be afraid of buying damaged land. You really just need to, you know, sit with yourself and analyze what your goals are and what your values are, because we need these damaged pieces of land to be managed better. You know, at the very least, we need them to stop being polluted, because if we stop messing around with them, you know, the natural ecology will heal, you know, given the time scale. But it'd also be nice to heal at a time scale that is really beneficial for human communities. So that requires us really working with these degraded landscapes. And most of the available farmland, you know, is in, you know, pretty degraded shape because of the ag practices that we've had for thousands of years. Or, I mean, depends on kind of how you think about it. But one thing I would say with looking for pieces of land is just be so, you know, if you want to find more of a pristine piece of land, really hone in to what data you need to gather. We took basically 2 years to look for this property that we've been on for the past 2 years, starting our farmstead. And it was almost a full-time job looking at all these places and, to analyze all the data. Just, a story to share. It's like the first place we found when we were, we really, we liked, it was a smaller plot, but everything looked really good. And we were like, well, we need to take soil samples and water samples, of course, as a baseline for, how healthy the system is that we're working with, because we want to know if there's some pollutant in there that's going to affect if we're going to grow food or not. And during the time, it was the pandemic that we were looking. So it's just like everything is happening so fast. And often in real estate, it happens so fast. Like you have to put in an offer right after you see it if you even want a chance to be able to buy it, especially these days. And so we put in an offer, and then we start, expanding our scope from that site. And it's like, oh, 5 miles away, actually, there's the last coal plant in Washington. And even though the predominant winds are going the opposite direction, we need to look deeper into what that means for the soil, get the soil analysis back, and heavy metal levels are, completely off the charts, but if we hadn't really taken the time to look at all the aspects and collect the data, we would have walked into a situation where we were growing leafy greens. We're getting a high amount of bioaccumulation of some really, toxic metals that, are poisonous at a very low concentration. So just, as much data as you can gather. But it's a bummer because of how fast the situation usually moves. And most of the time, they want to keep you from talking to the previous owner is a huge part of buying land. So at least in this country, I'm not sure how it's done in other countries.
That's a solid idea for a new course. How to find land, the master course. That'd be really cool.
Do it. We'll all
Maybe
watch
I
it.
will. Maybe I will.
So here's a question, a pragmatic question for Quatamuk. How much EM are you adding to polluted waterways? Like, what's the recipe? What's the ratio? What's how much amount? Is it like 5 gallons?
Every waterway is going to be different. Typically for projects like that, a teaspoon per gallon of water. There's different ways you can calculate how many gallons of water your body of water is. But one of the things why microorganisms are going to regrow themselves. So very little goes a long way, but you got to kind of think of it like your belly. If you're not used to eating yogurt and you eat a bunch of big tub of yogurt, you're going to kind of have some upset things happening. You don't want to put a bunch of EM in at one time. And you'll even see a lot of times as the microbes are swinging and doing their digestion, you'll have things coming up from the bottom of the water, depending on what type of waterway you have. But I find 1 teaspoon per gallon of water is a nice, easy way to come in, and you're not going to have any problems with that.
Okay, that's awesome. The 1 teaspoon per gallon. That's an incredible rule of thumb there. So on microremediation, Rascal, do fungi afterward need to be treated as hazardous?
That is another big, it depends. So it depends on the pollutant we're talking about. If we're talking about heavy metals, we know we can't break them down any further than they are. And so with heavy metals, it really depends on, what metal is it? Is it a metal that you can have in pretty high concentration in the soil, and it's actually, an essential nutrient for something? Because in that case, you might be able to just redisperse it in the right concentration for the environment, and it's totally beneficial. And then we have other heavy metals, things like mercury, which at a very low level have toxicity. So, in that situation, you got to figure out something creative to do with those metals. There's been a lot of talk about people being able to harvest those metals and utilize them in industry. I think that's, a potentially cool thing, but I don't really enjoy how that might support these damaging industries to continue. And so I think, a term that's thrown around a lot is dilution is the solution to pollution. Which in certain cases with heavy metals, I think is the answer. You know, these things are naturally dispersed in our environment. And so we just need to figure out, you know, where's the toxicity level. You know, maybe there's sometimes we have to like keep a barrel of something, you know, off in a warehouse. But my goal and my hope is, you know, we don't have to do that, and we can really reintegrate everything, because it's chemistry, and mushrooms are the greatest and the oldest chemists, you know, that we really have. And so they've been doing this, you know, a lot longer than any human mind, as far as we know. So yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot to that. With other pollutants, you know, these really complex chains of things that we've created, or like hydrocarbons, you know, there's good evidence to show we can get it to a point, if we have the right species in there, where it's totally inert. I mean, it's just food for the soil again, but
It's
it
enough
really
energy.
depends on, exactly, it's energy. It's all food for something. It just depends on, you know, how far you've taken it in the decomposition process. And in order to know that, we really need a lot more testing. Because there's like, you know, a lot of people talk about Paul Stamets breaking down petroleum with oysters. And on the surface, that study sounds really great. And when you read the scientific study, we actually see that in the pile, the amount of hydrocarbons went up in certain instances. Now, was that because of bad sampling? Or possibly was it because that one hydrocarbon is now broken down into 10 hydrocarbons, but they're still hydrocarbons, you know, so we've done part of the process, but we still have more to go. And that's where we need to get the EM, the plants, and bring, you know, the entire community into that process.
Dielectric barrier discharge also is something they've figured out. With a large enough shock of energy, you can basically take apart all these things. And if you think about it, I mean, it's taking energy to create these bonds. It's taking energy to break them. Oxidation is the loss, you know, of energy, or the liberation of energy is another way to think about it. So
yeah,
there's so much potential that is kind of just teasing us, like right now, like so many of us working in the microbial and mycological spaces, we see the studies, we see the working examples, we see some cases of these things actually scaling up and staying stable, because scaling up things quite often doesn't work. That's why gardens are often so beautiful, and large scale farms don't have that same charm. And so, yeah, no, I really think that there's and also taking that understanding and applying it on a real life manifestation, like where we're actually respecting that and being like, well, you know, this is actually something that we must keep local. Oh no, this is something we must manage locally. Oh, the families in this neighborhood are working together on this. It's like that small is beautiful thing is real. So, man, I love it. I can't get enough, obviously, of the mycological world. Actually, I don't know if you guys can see the screen behind me has well, it's a little dark, but it has mycelium. Looking at it through epifluorescence. It's because I've got the that light on. It just washes it out. All right. So the next question, I think this is going to be the last one before, and I'm going to open it. I'm going to use it. We're going to open the question on the other end of it so that we all can answer. And then we're going to start the giveaways. So the question is, a friend of mine is using vetiver grass on floats for his ponds and lake remediation projects. Thinking how to increase its potential with biology, like doing EM soak before they go into the floats and water. Any ideas and recommendations? And I would open it up and say, do you all have any recommendations and experience in creating floating islands? Because this is a high level, you know, permacultural thing that I only know a handful of people that are doing well. David, do you want to jump in first, and then maybe Morag?
No, I don't have anything to offer on that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like I said, it's like I don't know very many people. I know culturally there are areas of the world where they're incredible at floating gardens. Morag, do you want to jump in?
Nope, that's not my field of knowledge either. Sorry, Matt.
Raleigh, have you seen some floating gardens?
Oh yeah, we did a permaculture water summit. I think you visited Lucio, didn't you? The Chinampas, like
My
he operates.
wife is an intrepid traveler. She moved 23 times before she was 11.
Yeah,
And she was an Air Force brat. And so she grew up all over the world. And if you give her the opportunity or even like the idea that she could leave the country and go somewhere else, she's like already packed. Like you're like, wait, what do you? And she's like, I'm ready. I'm ready. You were thinking it, weren't you? Like so she went and filmed the Chinampas. She filmed a milpa farm. She filmed an indigenous market. I am not a good boy like you, Raleigh, and I haven't done all like the translations and created the all the documentaries that she's filmed. We released the Chinampas documentary, and I was the one who did all the work translating it all into writing and stuff. So.
well, good. I mean, like I haven't been there yet. I really want to. Uso Biagio, like he just manages and shows people how to maintain the Chinampas in Mexico City. And it just seems like like they just held on to this tiny fraction of what was left. It's like this teeny weeny bit of like, what was like 5,000 times bigger. And so, but there's still just a few surrounding.
Yeah, and it's not even Aztec. I'll jump in while you're frozen. Or is everyone frozen? Am I frozen? I think I might be frozen. Just wait a moment. I think I might be frozen.
He's back. There we go.
Hey.
He's back.
Mike?
I think it's reconnecting.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Well, so these blocks, a lot of the time, depending on the age or the type of mycelium, will actually be very buoyant. So utilizing mycelium to grow on whatever kind of material you're using as your base for a floating island and could make it, a little more buoyant and actually improve the structural integrity, because this is sawdust, and it's held together and it's a block you could build with now. And so you can really do a lot using, the functionality of hyphae and mycelium.
And I know over in Portland, I was working for Sound Native Plants. They did work at a Superfund site where they were replanting a lot of the floating gardens, which was styrofoam. And it was a Juncus patent they were sticking in, but they would continually die. So a lot of hiccup, and every site's going to be different, but this particular site just kept killing the plants. And then on the floating garden side, we've been using a long time something called an earth box, which really does mimic the floating gardens of the Aztec, where you have a sub-irrigated layer of water down at the bottom, and then your growing medium up on top, where the plants continually have access to the water. But this would be almost exactly like the floating gardens that we used to have down in Mexico. And a lot of people don't know about sub-irrigated planter technology. And the earth box is created up here in Pacific Northwest. But when you look at them, amazing way to grow food. And like, because I do cannabis and they do a lot of testing, you guys, we would grow the same strains in earth box as opposed to like hydroponic and living soil. And all the plants coming out of the floating gardens seem to have more terpenes or more flavor. Something about having the access, something about that water just created a completely different flower.
Wow. So the Chinampas, they can get up to 6 harvests a year, and it's actually cooler than you'd think in the area where these floating gardens were. And initially they were floating, and they eventually just kept adding mud, and they have these they're basically mud islands that if there's invasive tilapia that is destroying these mud islands by living inside them, by tunneling inside them. So they're trying to get rid of the invasive tilapia. They're trying to put netting around the edges and replanting the cedars along and the willows along the edges of the chinampas. The whole documentary that my wife filmed and that we edited together is on YouTube. If you look up on my if you look on my YouTube, Matt Powers, permaculture student, if you look for Chinampa, you'll find it. I am so grateful for all of these panelists. Please, down in the chat, let them know how you feel about today. Thank them, because I am so grateful for their just being willing to share, being willing to dive deep in so many different ways. Thank you all for being here. And I think that Morag, do you want to share some links for people to follow up with you and your work?
Thanks, Matt. I'm just going to drop in a series of links here. It's the Permaculture Education Institute page, the Sense Making is Changing World podcast, Ethos Foundation, which is our work that we do with refugee communities. And also, I think I dropped in there too, Permayouth, which is our, actually it should be permayouth.org. I've messed that one up. Sorry about that. But you can find it all pretty much through the Permaculture Education Institute site. And I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to follow up with anything, either from the presentation or from now, if you just want to get in touch and have a chat. I'm really sorry, Matt. I'm going to have to jump off now. It's been wonderful to be part of this conversation. And thanks for inviting us to be here together. And thank you, everyone, for being here too. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And enjoy your day, because it's the beginning of your day, right?
Yeah, it's just the morning now.
Good morning.
It's the last weekend of school holidays and the kids have all these plans, you know?
Oh,
and
yeah,
so I have to go off and kind of do mommy duties now.
I hear you. My boys are 12 and 16, and the amount of time that, you know, I have left and the amount of time that's really required right now is immense, but that's part of the deal. It's a good deal though. I love it.
It is a great deal. I love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt. Great to see you.
Thank you.
All.
And remember, everyone stay tuned, because we're going to do the giveaways here in a second. So like micro brews, this is giant. And some of them will be small, but all the ones that are being given out first are the big ones. So get excited. Got crazy amounts of seeds. I'm going to be giving away a copy of Unstoppable Enthusiasm. So when I was referencing all the different habits, all the different skills, all the different things that I do, all the different stories, they're all in here. So, and there's more, but I want to give the panelists an opportunity, if they want to like talk for a moment, share what they're doing, and duck out. If you want to stay for the giveaway, it gets crazy. It gets a little crazy. So I don't know. I'm giving you an option.
I heard it gets wild.
It's wild. It's a scramble. It's a lot of fun, actually. All right, so let's just do it. Or David, did you want to jump in?
No, not really, mate. I just want to say thank you for letting me jump on here, and love all your work, and love your enthusiasm particularly, and well, we just need to share it and continue to do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing the work that you do. Folks, if you don't follow David Spicer, please find him on Facebook and start following him. You might be on Instagram. I don't know yet. Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, Doc Spice Permaculture on Instagram. Yeah.
Check his work out. You'll be consistently inspired. So thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
And then Quadamuk has a challenge, right? You got gifts for people?
Yeah, I'm going to give away a pound of the bokashi balls to the 20th person to send their email to thegroundculturepdx.com to get on the newsletter. The 20th person will send you guys a pound, and you can get some of these amazing bokashi balls that we created by hand ourselves, and take home and clean some water.
Nice.
Those are precious. That's amazing. Raleigh, did you want to say something?
I was just saying nice, but I'd be totally down to give away free access, lifetime access to the Sustainable Design Masterclass for everyone who participated in this webinar. Whoa, even to the folks who came to the conference. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to say free lifetime access. Boom. Giving it away.
All
I'll
right.
follow up.
I will take it.
So what do we have to do, Raleigh? What's the step?
I just need to follow up with you. I need to get like a one code that works for everybody, and you can send it to your list.
Okay, sweet. It'll go in the digital goodie bag.
Yeah,
And
totally.
that's it. That's wildly valuable. It's not just like one online course. It's like years of online courses all wrapped into one.
Yeah, it's like 70 webinars by this point. It's crazy.
Yeah. This is an incredible value. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Wow. Holy cow. Thank you so much. All right. So you heard it here. That's incredible. Rascal, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I'll maybe. Yeah. Thank you, Raleigh. That's amazing. I want to take that. We'll see you there.
All right. You got it.
Maybe, yeah, I'll just take a moment to do this thing. I don't have one of those fancy things like Quadamut where he has. I have a whiteboard though. Let's see. So I'm not really on Instagram that much, or I haven't been in years, but that top one is my Instagram handle. I'm transitioning to soil ecology, starting up my soil health analytics business. Also a professional like mycology consultant for foraging, people who are trying to grow gourmet mushrooms, microremediation projects. And yeah, going back to a previous love of working with the soil, looking at the microbial communities, specifically for projects who are regen ag focused. And, the little lab I'm starting will be able to give people kind of readouts of all the different functional groups, and things of that nature. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can follow along at Soil Ecology, or here, let's see, how do I position this? Or send me a direct email at soilecologyanalytics@gmail.com. And maybe I'll just throw that stuff up on the chat. That sounds like an easy way to do that.
That's great. And send me all that so I can put it below your talk.
Sounds good. Yes, sounds good. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone for being here. Matt, for you putting this on, for all the amazing presenters, Quadamut, Raleigh, Morag, David. It's been great to talk with y'all. And yeah, let's keep spreading the spores, spreading the seeds, spreading the inspiration. We can do it.
That's absolutely the truth. That's the truth. We can do it. And not only that, it's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time doing it. And the world we create in that space and in that spirit, it's an unstoppable thing. It's an incredible thing. So we've got incredible sponsors as well as incredible panelists and speakers. And these incredible sponsors are Blue Sky Biochar is providing this incredible soap kit. This is a gift set. This is bamboo biochar soap, bamboo vinegar soap, lava rock soap, simple cleanse soap, and it's all made with yucca and coconut oil, olive oil, no palm oil. My wife came home, and we talked about this like 2 days, like yesterday, I think in the live, palm oil, or 2 days ago with Fungi Academy. And my wife came home incensed, like yesterday, being like, Dr. Bronner's now is palm oil. And it's unbelievable. They've backtracked. And so Blue Sky Biochar stepping up. So that's in there. And then there's bamboo vinegar. We've been talking about VOCs. That's liquid VOCs, essentially. We've got heirloom seeds. We've got different options. We've got microbrew coffee. We've got microbrew mocha, microbrew cocoa, and then microbrew matcha, if you're into the matcha. And then there's also the whole seed catalog, which is really, an educational thing for me to know what's possible and out there. I get really motivated when I see the rainbow, when I see all the different colors of melon and like watermelon. It's like, I always want the yellow. I always want the yellow and the orange watermelon. I just do. I get really motivated by that. And then we're also going to give away a copy of Unstoppable Enthusiasm, which does have a free online course attached to it. So you can find all of that when you get the book. So let's begin. And we also have a golden ticket. So if you know what the golden ticket is from last year, this is $1,000 voucher it's a course coupon code voucher for $1,000 to Farming Secrets. And they have an enormous library. I mean, they have, Elaine Ingham doing in-depth microscopy courses. They've got Darren Doherty. They've got Cole Seiss. If you were into grazing, if you're into farming, like they've got it all at Farming Secrets. So be sure to check that out. There's a $100 voucher that everyone gets in the digital goodie bag. So that's already there. But this $1,000 voucher, there's only 5. We gave away one yesterday and we're about to give away one today. Ready? Here we go. Get your fingers ready. I'm going to get the chat down to the bottom so I don't mistakenly say someone won who didn't. All right, here we go. What is the name of David Holmgren's most recent book? All right, sweet. So Mathis, how do you pronounce your name, Matt? I would like to know, Matt. Mathis. It's Mathis, right? Like Matthias. We have the same name, probably a different language derivation. Excellent. All right, so Matthias, you have won a deluxe goodie bag. So, and by the way, if you guys are international ever, I've got digital substitutes for you guys. So it's all good. You're gonna win something. Very good. Congratulations, Matthias. That is awesome. I learned something new today. Another person has my name in another language and a new spelling. I love this. Thank you so much for being here. All right, next question. Are we ready? What's your favorite seed to save? This is an easy one. Tomato. Ah! Woo! All right, Arvin, you just got that. You just got a deluxe goodie bag, Arvin. Good job. All right, everyone, get ready. All right, ready? What is your favorite permaculture principle? You have to write it out. Oh my gosh, it's gonna happen.
Ooh, fast fingers.
So are we going to say a principle is one of the ethics or not? Because the ethics aren't the principles, right? The principles come after the ethics in the book. So let's go through this.
Ooh.
Edge, we got to write it out. Fair share, earth care, those are principles. Edge is a piece of it. Swale is a technique. Sustainability is a concept. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I believe there's 12 of them.
There might be 12.
Oh my gosh, I suck at this game. I'm sorry, Eric. Oh, okay. So we should do this again. We should observe and interact. Samantha just did it. Good job, Samantha. Samantha just nailed it. So that was hyper specific. That was a hard one. I admit that was a hard one. Samantha, you nailed it. That was right. So the thing is, I know the ethics are very important. Edge effect is another one. Oh, good job. All right. So what's your favorite fresh garden snack? Like the things you eat in the garden. Oh man, they're going crazy. All right, I gotta go to the top. Oh my gosh, you guys like knew that one. You were ready. Peas, punzo or punzo.
It's a good snack.
Very good. Very good. That's actually like the first snack I was able to get Oliver to eat out of the garden was the pea flowers and the baby peas. Oh, they were sweet. Yeah. Very good. All right. So those were the 4 goodie bags. And now the moment has come. $1,000 that we're here. $1,000 course coupon voucher. I mean, this is a lot. Okay, ready? I'm gonna let in Jeremy so he can compete. We'll give a moment so Jeremy can come in. Now Jeremy's in. Now we can compete. Here we go. Who was the other co-originator of permaculture alongside David Holmgren? Woo! Like I said, some of them will be easier and some of them will be harder. Oh, man. All right. Thomas Hudspeth Tatham. Great name. Wow, Thomas. That's an awesome name. That is awesome. You just won $1,000 course coupon voucher for Farming Secrets. Congratulations. Taken with that other voucher together, you could get a lot done. You could get a lot learned. All right. And I did say there was one more. So what was the name of the thing that Quatamuk offered and held up? Do you guys remember? Because you're not going to find out about them from anyone else. He's the only person I've ever heard make them, and they're desirable. I got given one when I moved in to my new house. Like, they are that desirable. They're incredible. He gave them to me because I had a pond. Oh my gosh, there's so many people got this right. That is amazing. All these people now will remember and know bokashi balls. And that's the thing, is it's like this is a technique that I think that you need to officially share, maybe write it like a small book around, because it's an incredible technology that you created. Oh wow. All right. I think it's Crump. Is that Brian Crump? I think it's Crump. Good job. All right. So the way to get your prizes is to email me at matt@thepermaculturestudent.com. I've written down all of your names. Let me just make it to everyone. Boom. So email me at matt@thepermaculturestudent.com, and I will ship you your prizes. I will send you the course coupon codes. And if you are international, I will provide you with a digital substitute. This is a book that was so critically important for me to write. And it healed so much in my life. For me personally, it helped my wife and I through a very difficult time when she was extremely sick. And I just wanted to motivate her with panic and fear. I was afraid. We were afraid. So I was like, you got to do this stuff. You got to do that. And she just was overwhelmed. And I had to realize that I needed to have unstoppable enthusiasm such that I wasn't, freaking out and over exaggerated. I was literally resonating with that comfort, with that joy that she really needed in that time of support. And in the world today, with all the craziness, the techniques and patterns that are in here are the things that I use to bounce back. And they're the things that I'm talking about every day at the beginning of each day in this conference. So thank you for joining us and being part of it. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. All the new winners. This was so much fun. I love this. I'm going to be doing this more. This is not the last of these conferences. I'm going to be doing our soil next later in the year, I think in the fall. And so this is all going to happen again. We're just going to all talk about soil the next time. And I'm going to get a lot of sponsors, and we're going to have a ton of prizes and fun things to give away, because I love sharing. I love giving. It builds my enthusiasm. And that's what this is all about. This is figuring out what makes you enthusiastic and connecting to it so you can start 2023 with the most enthusiasm and the most excitement and inspiration. This has been our live panel for permaculture and gardening. Thank you so much, Quatamuk. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Raleigh. And thank you so much, Rascal. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for watching the replay, everyone. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And we will see you all soon.
Thanks, Matt. See everybody. Bye.
Thanks, mate.
Are you tired of the news? Feeling overwhelmed, distracted, drained, anxious about the future? Well, what about today? Because our future starts with the day, with the actions we take and the choices that we make today in our communities and our own personal lives. Join us this January 19th for Our Future 2023. Let's flip the script and unleash our best selves together. Over 30 different speakers from all over the world sharing inspiration, hope, and pragmatic how-to around mushroom growing, gardening, herbalism, farming, microscopy, and everything in between. Join us and step out of the matrix and into a future that's in your hands. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And click that link below. It's free to sign up. You'll be able to watch all the talks. You'll be able to join us for all the lives. There's giveaways every day. You don't want to miss it.